Hi guys, welcome back. Before we get started, let's just point our Maya to our project folder. So mine's NMD project 1 underscore PR and hit set. We're going to have a quick look at what makes up a polygon model. So I'm going to start by just creating a cube. Maximize my viewport by hitting space. I'm in wireframe mode at the moment. I'm going to hit this shaded square at the top of the viewport there, which has a hotkey which is 5. And I'm going to turn my textures on. If I assign any materials to the object, they won't show up unless that is pressed. The hotkey for that is 6. So up until now we've been selecting objects. If you right click on an object, you get a markup menu and your options are face, vertex face, vertex, edge, UV and multi. We'll predominantly be using object mode, edge, vertex and face. So I'm just going to go ahead and select a few faces. Now you'll notice I can select them one at a time. If I want to add to my selection, I can hold the shift button. If I want to subtract from the selection, I can hold the control button and click adjacent faces. Now I'm using a PC, so often I'm hitting control. If the function isn't active on the control button on a Mac, just use the command key. While selecting faces, you can marquee select, so I'm just going to go into quad mode here. Right click select faces and drag select over that area of the model. And if you have a look, that's selected. Now I'm just going to open my toolbox using the tool icon in the top right and hit this camera based selection button. I'll show you what that does. Now if I drag select with that box checked, I'm only selecting what I can actively see in the viewport. I'm going to disable that for the moment. Maximize my perspective viewport, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to select an edge. So that's an edge. An edge is a line between two vertexes or vertices. Now when an edge runs around a model or around a portion of a model, it's called an edge loop. You can select an edge loop just by double clicking on it. Just going to hit W to go into the move tool. I can slide that edge. I can scale the edge and I can rotate the edge. Next we're just going to look at selecting vertexes. Now just like faces and edges, I can shift select and I can deselect them one at a time. Maya calls them vertices, which is actually correct. A lot of 3D software programs just call them points. The next hotkey I want to talk about is the number 3 key. So select an object. I've just had to go back into object mode and hit 3. And this is called a smooth mesh preview. Maya creates a smooth between polygons. Just as a demonstration, I've lined up these objects to give you an idea of how the smooth mesh preview functions. So these 4 objects are actually the same object with varying resolutions. The less density, the less polygon density of the object, the more Maya's going to actually smooth it. Okay, so let's move on and do some modeling. So I'm going to start here with a polygon plane. And I'm going to hit the settings button and 4x4 subdivisions. I'll go for a size of 35 for the moment. Okay. So the first tool I'm going to show you is the extrude tool. So when you use the extrusion tool, unless you want to extrude 4 separate polygons that are not joined together, make sure you've got this keep faces together box checked. So I'm going to hit extrude, and I can use the extrude handle or the thickness slider, or I can just hit W, grab the move tool, and move my extrusion up. I'm just going to hit 3, which is the smooth tool again. I'm just making sure that the extrusion went well and the integrity of the mesh is sound. Okay. I'm going to punch a hole in this mesh. And I've got a edge displaying when it wasn't selected. So I've just selected all my edges and clicked off and it's disappeared. So I'm going to punch a hole in this mesh. To do that, I'm going to have to add some resolution. So I'm going to use the Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop tool. I'm going to interactively place edges to create detail. So I'm going to drop out of the tool by hitting Q, and I can still grab those edges. I've just double clicked that and slide them around. So I'm going to move over to faces, select the faces, and just delete them. So at the moment it's 2-dimensional, so we're going to give it some depth. So I'm going to double click the edge around that hole, and Maya's automatically selected the whole edge loop for me. From there, I'm going to go Edit Mesh, Extrude, and just move it out. Might do it one more. Maya uses a handy shortcut. It's the G key. It actually allows you to repeat the last command you performed. So I'm going to hit G. So I've just made another extrusion, and I'm going into the scale tool so I can scale out my new extrusion. Okay, from that angle we have some depth. Next thing I want to show you is how to weld or merge vertex or vertices together. So I'm just going to perform an extrusion, and I'm going to extrude up to that edge there, hit G to repeat, extrude again, hit G to repeat, and extrude again. Now I've just smoothed my object, and you can see there's a little bit of a fault there. That's because these vertexes are not joined. So I'm going to select those two, go Edit Mesh, Merge to Center, select those two, I'm going to hit G to repeat, those two, hit G to repeat, and the bottom one's done. There we go. I'm going to do one more extrusion on this wall here. I'm going to add some detail first. Some detail there. And grab this line of faces. So grab one and shift double click another, and I can get the whole loop. And go Edit Mesh, Extrude. I'm going to use the slider to extrude, and so I'm having trouble with accuracy there, so I'm going to go in numerically. Try 1. No, that's too high. Let's try 0.25. Good. Now I just want a little bit of, I just want this edge here to not be so extreme. So I'm going to use the bevel tool. So now I've got those edges across the top of that skirting board. I'm going to go Edit Mesh, Bevel, bring up the bevel settings window, go 0.5 and 3. Have a play with that. So I'm going to go Bevel. Much better. So at this point I've got this floor and 2 walls and a window, and it's all one object, and I've decided, well, it's going to be a lot easier to work with this if the floor is actually a separate object. I'm going to show you how to separate polygons from an existing object. So I've just selected the floor, go Mesh, this is not Edit Mesh, this is actually the Mesh window, and I go Extract. Go back to Object Mode and click off, and now I've got the floor object and the room object. Now I've been modeling this wall for a while, and I've performed quite a few operations. So I'm just going to select that object and show you the construction history that Maya has retained as I've been modeling. Over here in the channel box, you can see these are all the operations. Every single one I can animate. At this point where we're still just modeling, this construction history is actually bogging Maya down. It's making the operating system run slower. So I just want to delete all that history. I'm just going to show you in the attribute editor, the history is defined by separate tabs. So say I want to select an object and go to the color channel, I've got to click through all of those tabs to get to it. But I don't actually need that history. So routinely while you're modeling, go to the edit menu with your object selected, delete by type, history. If you select delete all by type history, you'll delete all construction history in your entire scene. At this point I could just use that command. And all those tabs have disappeared and the channel box is clean. So we've got these two objects, they're unnamed and they've got no shader attached to them except for Maya's default Lambert. So let's fix that up. Go to object mode, open the channel box and call it floor geo, and we'll call that wall geo. So in the channel box, wall geo. Let's assign some shaders to these. So in my viewport, I'm going to right click the floor, assign a new material, use a blend shader and give it a name. That's a floor MAT for material. Do this one. Assign new material. I'm just going to use this assign favorite material because I know blend's easier to find. And we're going to call that wall MAT for material. Okay, finally I'm just going to put some bars in this window. So I'm going to start with a cylinder. I'm going to switch to the top view. And this is where the window is. So this is where I'm going to place the cylinder. I'm going to go into quad mode by hitting space. Create a polygon primitive cylinder. And I'm going to drag out the profile of the cylinder in the top view. And then extend it in the perspective view. So I've used two windows to do that. And that's actually about right because when I scale the whole cylinder down, it's going to be thinner. So at this point, the cylinder doesn't quite reach, so I'm going to switch over here to my front view. Move that up, and I'm going to have to scale that. Okay, so there's two things I can do with this. I can duplicate it, which is edit, duplicate, and drag it out. And I could keep doing that, or I can use this little duplicate with transform tool. So I've just duplicated an object and then I've transformed it in space. If I repeat that, it repeats the last transform. And now I'm going to use the G key to just repeat my command. And one more. So now I've got these bars. They're all separate objects. They're actually going to be easier to handle if they're one object. I'm just going to move them over a bit. So I'm going to use this mesh combine tool. Now the bars are one object. Now I've finished with combining those bars. Let's give them a name. Bars GL. And let's give them a shader. Assign favorite material, blend. Okay, so we've got a pretty basic model here. It's got no roof. I'm going to select the floor. I'm going to use Control D, which is a shortcut for edit duplicate, and just raise that floor up to the roof. Okay guys, I'm going to have to wrap up. I've hit the 15-minute mark. Thank you.